that is the one thing about working from home that is that I don't like is that I sit in this same seat for 10 hours or 11 hours. You're never outside. You don't.
Mm.
So I look for reasons to go outside.
What's funny is, Frank, that like when you and I talk during my workday, I don't attribute your space similar to like when Jared and I talk to working. It's because Jared and I almost never talk about work when we talk, but like when we do talk, it's in the
Don't
context.
tell other people that,
Yeah, yeah,
Stephen. We are
yeah.
we are
We're,
constantly delivering value to our
yes,
respective organizations.
You're
Let it be
you're
known.
building. It's team building. It's
yeah.
team building activity. So
Right, but there's always like this like work undertone whenever we're speaking. We always come back to work like after every segue. So
Yeah.
so it is kind of it's a strange dichotomy between like, oh, when I'm talking to Frank, I'm always like talking about whatever. And when I'm talking to Jared, it's whatever plus work, right? So it's a different vibe.
I'll try to start mixing up my backgrounds depending on whether we're digressing versus talking about NFA or something. Yeah.
yeah,
Very
I
good.
when I use Teams, my backgrounds are always an age test. Like if you
I ever since we redid the backyard, I've been actually taking some afternoons and going outside and just sitting back there just to mental break and stuff. And that as we kick in, that might be an interesting segue topic. Is when you're working, when it's the day job, when you start going, what do you do to take mental breaks during the work period?
Geez, how
You
much
know?
time you got? I mean,
Oh,
people have said that I've had a mental break for a long time.
yeah, that's. I was
Frank,
accused.
you're like a Kit Kat mentally.
Hey, Anthony.
Okay,
Lionel is keeping us on task here.
the way it should be.
Okay,
Chat
great.
going on? Oh, I can't see that.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
Hey,
you're walking the streets.
I
All right,
know.
so welcome everybody to yet another Z Rebels Technical Water Cooler. We're here to talk about whatever is interesting to you. You all know the rules, you know the procedures here. If you'd like to talk about something, you can either put it in the chat. If you want us to read it out, please say something like "read this." If the conversation's a little bit slower, we might read your message anyway. So be aware that whatever you say might be read. If you, oh gosh, if you want to speak verbally, like through your video or your audio, you will need to hit the little speak on stage. I think there's a hand icon. I don't know. They've changed it recently. So we'll bring you up. And when you're done talking about whatever it is you want to talk about, we ask that you click the little or tap the little leave the stage button to make kind of space for others who want to be on stage, so they can pop up and talk as well. And if you have something else you want to add to the conversation, you just raise your hand and we'll bring you right back up again. It's not too terribly convoluted or hard to do, but there's no topic that you can't discuss. We ask that it theoretically be about System Z. Mainframe topics would be optimal for this conversation. But we're here to talk about anything. Maybe you're asking like, what is a mainframe? That's fine. If you're asking like how to specifically do something really complicated, that's great too. Whatever you want to talk about, you're welcome to talk about. I will say we are trying something new here. We do have a recorder that Emma has graciously kind of conjured up with her technical skills here that's supposed to be recording this session for the hope that we might post it online in case anyone wants to look at it again or listen to it again, whether they do or not. So just a heads up, by virtue of being here, and I'll try to post in the chat every handful of minutes, you're allowing us to record you and potentially post that to YouTube or wherever you want. We got some nice gifts in the chat there. So let's get started. It's 8:03 for me here in the central US. That means that I'm 3 minutes late. But what we'd like to do is just open the floor for anybody to bring a topic to the table. If you don't bring a topic, we will try to make one up and we'll talk about it. So is there anything that's on people's minds right now that they would like to discuss specifically?
I posted in the chat a topic. Here's a question, and I know most of us are techies, except for a few of us who are retired, but we're still techies. How to encourage senior level management to prioritize training for entry level positions?
Senior level management prioritizing training for entry level positions. Jared's
Let's go,
got
kids.
a thought.
Morning.
Wait for the AI bubble to pop.
That's AI is actual intelligence.
Yeah, Lionel, this is a really good question. My technique has been to just peel off enough of my own time to try to like hype up young people in the company and like get them excited about the stuff that I happen to know about, so that if they are interested in that stuff, they know that they can bug me with questions. And then if anybody bugs me with enough questions and pulls me off of things that maybe are a higher priority for upper level management, they might like backfill by saying like, okay, we're going to use like less of Jared's time for that by like doing more of our own training maybe. So it's a roundabout way of sort of indirectly incentivizing, you know, other forces in the organization to also chip in and do that. But I really consider it more of a cultural thing than a like top-down directive, we will train in a lot of cases. I guess a counterexample would be internships, right? Like if we bring in genuinely new human beings who don't have much ZOS experience at all, I don't know. We're trying various programs to try to bring in new people and ramp them up, but it's really a spread spectrum thing, and I don't know. I'm eager to hear what everybody else has to say on the topic.
Well, let me go back to, I guess it's a Back to the Future kind of a thing. Back in the 70s and 80s, large companies, even small companies, would have entry level positions. They would hire like, clerks or whatever you want to call them. And the goal was to train them. And it may take 2, 3, 4 years or more to train them to be system programmers, to train them to be application developers. But the companies understood that investment and they did that. And some companies that were smart adjusted their salary grades, their position levels, so that as people learned more and became more valuable, their salary grade increased and their pay increased. Some companies didn't get that smart and found they had a high turnover. But I haven't seen that for a long time.
So I think one of the problems that we're battling right now is that we have a continued devalued workforce in the sense that like our IT departments keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller. It's really hard to hire new talent and train them up when you only have enough slots for hiring 3 people. You need the experienced folks. Now I'm not saying that that's ideal. I'm just saying that I think that's a problem that we have to deal with, right? Is that it would be great to actually have the time to actually train somebody, but if you don't have the funding that even permits you to hire more than 3, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I think that's a problem.
Well,
That's exactly right. And that's why I say we need to get senior level management to buy into this.
the other thing that it's in here that makes executives less likely to do this is, why should I spend money to train somebody who's likely to leave as soon as they get the training, right? Because now they have a skill that that is marketable, and they'll go somewhere else and make more money, right? So the thing that's more upsetting to me is all these companies seem to be looking for mainframers with, 20 years experience, and they that's what I really want, so I don't have to train, right? And on other platforms, it's easier to find people who already know what they need to do, certainly to manage the platform.
You know, we've had this cultural shift in the past decade or so, and I'll say it's thanks to the internet about you are your brand. And the thing is, you know, you if you learn things, you are effectively improving your, you know, your marketing and stuff. So of course, we are encouraging people to job hop, you know, which I get the point from the CEOs. But on the other hand, it's also an admission that their corporate culture sucks. Because if someone is willing to leave, you know, I mean, money is important for sure, but you go back and you look at all the studies and surveys that have been done. If people hate working at a place, of course they're going to leave. And I think the CEO is too far removed from reality of the corporation that, you know, they're just looking at whatever the accountant's throwing in front of them.
So-
and I would say to piggyback on that, right, is I don't think I would even accept a job offer unless it was something that would be marketable some other place, just for the branding purposes. And it's big. And if I was working for a company that was exclusively trying to train me on something that would only apply to their company, that would be something I would be completely opposed to doing, because it's not just like having a crappy corporate culture that can make you want to leave. Turns out people get laid off also, and if I get stuck in a situation where, you know, I don't have my job anymore, I want to be able to go someplace else and, you know, protect myself and, you know, protect my family, right? So it has to go both ways. Like, there has to be an understanding from the company that the branding isn't just for the sake of trying to get as much money as possible. It's also for stability.
That requires long-term thinking, as opposed to, you know, how are the numbers next quarter? And besides, 6 quarters from now, the execs will be rotated out anyway, so they don't care.
Exactly.
So we have a
I got
toxic
mine.
business attitude that's to be addressed.
That's all very true. So the question is, what is the tact, what is the approach to senior management to convince them that they need to change the culture and invest in new hires?
The problem there is that the senior management is butting up against the C-level management. And, you know, it's the conundrum of the manager. You don't want to piss off the person in front of you or above you, because then they're going to, you know, shuffle you out in the organization chart and drop strong hints that maybe you should go elsewhere. Unfortunately, we have cults of C-levels these days, and that's the problem. You either worship them or you get banished.
Okay, so let me change the topic from senior level management to C-level management.
You cost money, they won't want to listen to you.
Yeah.
It's an investment conversation, right? Like, I think it all drives back to this idea and this perception that how do I not invest in the platform while simultaneously investing in the platform, right? And that's the challenge that we have right now. Something that Jared said when he first came on struck me, and I kind of wanted to pivot this conversation a little bit. Apologies, Lionel, for that. Is
No
that
worries.
a lot of us people that are, you know, hands in the dirt, in the trenches, doing the work, feel like we have the responsibility to do that, right? So as soon as I close out of this call, I go to another call that is about training people that I host internally. Why do I do that? Because I feel like if I don't do it, nobody else will. And I oftentimes ask myself the question, am I doing us all a disservice by rising to the occasion and training people and providing them the expertise because I think I'm kind of performing CPR on the industry so that if they see that we have people that can do these things, they're more likely to continue to do these things. They'll say, wow, you know, Emma's so darn good at what she does. I got to keep investing in my mainframe. Or is that a mental fallacy that I have?
You're flying under the radar in some ways, because what you're doing does not require a line item in the budget.
We call that a tuck. We tuck it under something else, right?
But I can't imagine that I'm the only person doing that, because I think that what Jared said reminded me of that, right? He was like, well, I, make myself available to these people. And this is kind of my avenue for doing that. And I feel like I have a broader reach by kind of hosting a session similar to this on Fridays, where I say, hey, what are your questions? What can I teach you? How can I help you get over your hurdles? And you're right, Frank. Like, I oftentimes feel like I'm causing more pain than I am alleviating by providing these services.
No, you're not. You're absolutely not. You're helping the organization probably at some multiple of what anybody recognizes, just by making clear to other people in the organization that you're open to receiving their questions.
Yeah, I don't think you realize just how bad when you have toxic people that always shoot you down and tell you, no, 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 you're stupid. That's not the way we do it here. That really tamps down the temperature and the climate for, innovation and investment in new things. You just, well, if I'm going to get yelled at in meetings, why am I even going to care? I'll just keep my head down and do my thing.
Man, Anthony, that makes me so sad just to hear that there's organizations like that still out there.
We were
You know?
very guilty of that, but thanks to folks like Frank and Frank, taking a crowbar and getting some people out the door here, we now have a climate where innovation is prized a bit more, as opposed to being, demonized. I was once the young guy in the room, and I was told, that essentially that's not the way we do it here. Why are you bothering us? Like we don't need version control for our test cases, or we don't need to, do CI/CD. We just put together ZOS at the very end. Well, that's why it takes 2 months to build a release driver, So that kind of stuff you need to get out in front of. But you need the right people in the right places.
Yeah, I mean, there is such a dichotomy between, and it's one of the hardest things to learn, right? As a young developer, or as someone who like wants to make an impact and learn a bunch of stuff, like how many of my intuitions are the ones that I should try to push for and fight for, even if people with a lot more experience and probably relevant experience are telling me not just that's not the way we do it, but the subtext is there's a reason we don't do it that way, versus how much do I just like open my ears and try to ingest all of that tribal knowledge and try to integrate it before I do pushing in new directions. And I don't know if anybody ever gets it right? But that's what makes it so critical to be in an organization where people are going to try to hear your suggestions in a charitable light and like take the new bits of knowledge or wisdom that maybe they were missing and try to inject their own, well, have you thought of this? Like before Greg Dick died, Greg was like our Buddha on the mountaintop who could say, like, from personal experience, this is why DB2 memory works this way, or this is how the ZOS designers were thinking about the problem when they decided to create this thing that you now, young Padawan, are dismissing as this, like, I don't know, needlessly arcane or complex part of the subsystem. And man, I miss them like every week for having that perspective. Like it was just so wonderful to have someone where if you needed to know, not just like why is this bit the way that this bit is like in the ZOS internals, but like why was this general subsystem set up this way? Having people around with the breadth of knowledge to try to explain that to you, or to even give you that gut sense of like, are we thinking about this problem the right way, or should we like go back to the core of the way maybe it was done 15 years ago and we've forgotten? I don't know. There's a lot of like, there's nothing new under the sun to be experienced in the Z space, because, you hear about VMware or like microservices or like any of the new hotness. The new hotness has probably been done in some way, shape, or form in the mainframe community for a decade or more, probably a lot more than 1 decade. But the question is like, how do you take that probably very correct way that like the IBM Hersley team thought about the computer science of the topic inside CICS and apply those same kinds of like core CS wisdoms to how do we make this, web API smooth and easy to stand up for someone who just came out of college. And if you can like figure out how to square that circle, Earth gets better, right? Like mainframes run longer, software crashes less. Like everybody out there in the world who doesn't understand that their existence depends in some strong way on these systems continuing to run well, people fail to crash the economy on purpose, for example. I don't know. There's a lot to be gained and lost by us solving these problems the right way. I don't know. But to your point earlier, Anthony, if you're in an organization where you're just constantly getting shut down, please continue showing up places like this where you won't be. And I don't know, consider coming and working for Rocket or something instead. That's just not the way we do business.
Well, it's honestly things like this are useful because then we can point internally and say, hey, we're hearing a lot of noise about this externally. If Emma gets upset about something, and rightfully so, we could say, hey, we have a major financial customer that is unhappy about this, and then all of a sudden, higher management says, oh, really? Okay, so it's not just Frank yelling at us again, old man yells at cloud kind of thing. So it's nice to have something like this because we can get different opinions and different people together and have that kind of collective push forward.
Yeah,
Well,
and I think, go ahead, Frank, sorry.
Go.
I was just going to say, I think that the ultimate crux of this conversation and almost every conversation we have is about driving people and influence and incentive to be here to the table. And I know that Frank and I have massaged through this conversation. Feel like every time we talk, right, we end up back here. And I think every time the water cooler comes together, we inevitably end up back here at this idea of like, what do we do to get people to the table? And I think that we, the collective industry, have this expectation that this group, right now there's 38 of us in here, this group of people are the people who are going to solve the problem, right? And I think that if I were to fire up some crazy conversation about insert whatever non-mainframe topic is here on LinkedIn Live, that was a distributed topic or something, I would probably hazard that I would get maybe 50 to 100 people just to pop in that knew nothing about me or anything that I was talking about, right? So we can't rely on just 38 to 40 people to solve the problem. We have to have some pipeline, some, I guess, driving attribute that is going to get people to say, hey, I want to be a part of this. And we need to focus on how do we get that investment that Lionel's talking about? Like, what's our value proposition? Because these are really innovative computers, didn't really work out too hot for us. Now we're playing this story of this is the critical infrastructure of the world, and if you don't do this, the whole world will collapse. That doesn't seem to be working out too well for us. So what's the next angle?
Yeah, and this is along the line of what I wanted to bring up, right? Is that let's say one of us pisses Steven off, and he says, "Well, I'm just going to stop this Discord servers completely. I'm just going to stop it." What happens, right? There's just nothing, right? The importance of every person here and their ability to help make this group better is just not thought about enough. That we have the opportunity to really, as a group, become something more, right? And I literally worry about this all the time because it is there's 30 something people here, and you people represent the core of our capability worldwide. Think about that for a second. Is where else could you go if it weren't for this group, right? What else would we be able to do? And so, we're talking about how do I get people up to speed faster? How do I become, or how do I find the capability of teaching people? That's us, right? I think, yes, it's great to be able to go to a company like Interskill and get education, but most of what you get from that is kind of here's what you need to know to survive, right? We need more than that. We need to be nurturing each other. We need to grow together. And that's why do you think a man this old keeps coming back to this, right? I mean, I am what, 50, 60 seconds from death. We need to get people who are gonna help keep this community going.
Yeah. I definitely agree. I think that when we talk about, what would be required to drive more people into this space and industry, there's two things. There's the motivation, which I think Stephen mentioned a little bit, the angle that we're pitching for why it's a worthwhile place to be, but then there's also the barrier to entry, right? And the fact that you have to learn a lot of these very bespoke skills to participate. It is, to me, a stark contrast. When I think of, in comparison, like the Linux ecosystem, I can go, this is just a side note, but I can go on to the Arch Linux user repository and find drivers for a random label printer that I bought. And those are up there and available to me because it is so easy to develop and contribute packages to Linux and Arch Linux that's just some random person who is not paid decided to make that available. And so when you have a barrier of entry that is very, very low, you almost stop needing motivation at all. People will find their own motivations. People like Emma, I think, are a great example because she wanted to develop this toolkit, and that was something that I think is really just her own personal interest in wanting to solve that problem. And unfortunately, to her credit, she had to learn those skills that she needed to do that development. But if we made it easier for people to contribute in that way, then we would see lots and lots and lots of projects like Emma's beginning to appear. Now that I've talked about how to do it, I get into the problems with doing it. It would require, substantially changing the software and the interfaces that the mainframe uses now to make them able to be more open sourced and more compliant and interoperable with things like C APIs and things like Rust and Python and so on. And there's work being done there for sure, but the fact that this community is only the size that it is shows us that the barrier is still there. And then there's also the question of how do you convince upper management, that was something that was talked about before, the C-suite, to invest more time and energy into training these new hires so that once someone has decided that they want to join the industry, they can be onboarded as quickly as possible. And that's difficult because they don't listen to us, as the point has been made. And eventually, the answer will be, well, all of the people who have the skills and the experience, the veterans of the industry, will start to retire, and they will very quickly realize that these new hires that were poorly trained are all they have. Now, that would be an unfortunate situation because I think it would be very disruptive and lead to a lot of panic and not for nothing difficulty on the part of the new hire generation that's kind of picking up all of that slack that's left behind. So
And a lot of those new
what
folks are essentially vibe coding and aren't picking up the necessary skills.
And
So
here's
we're gonna end up in
yeah,
a
I mean, there's
perfect
that
storm
whole
situation.
contradiction too. But I think mainly so it becomes a question of what can we do now to bridge that skill gap before we hit that hard wall of the floor dropping out from underneath of us.
Well,
and here's
and I would say it's not just that, right? My hope for this community is that we remain together to support each other over time, right? So I also, to your point, John, um, I need this growing community to to support each other because hey, I had this problem and I learned how to do this. And having that out there in this community really helps somebody else who hits that problem, right? Because those of us who have been doing this a long time have a ton of experience. Um, and it's the experience, and experience is always what you get when you don't get what you want, right? So I've gone through this horrible pain, and we came to an answer. Let me tell you, so that you don't have to go through that horrible pain. I need this community to do that. I need this community to really continuously support each other because our executive overlords believe that AI is somehow going to have all of that information for you. And I hear this all the time, right? It isn't. It's not going to be all knowing, but we as a group can be, right? And that's really what I need this community to become is the the support network for a new generation of mainframers.
yeah, and
Yeah,
here's
I definitely agree.
yeah, and
I
here's
mean,
another.
go ahead, Leonard.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so one other thing to keep in mind with regards to that, we were talking about, oh, we need to build interfaces and we need to build a, community, which those are definitely two of the key pillars. But, the other thing is, when you're, doing stuff in Linux land and Python land and all that, you really take it for granted how easy it is to just go online and find a really well put together YouTube tutorial or a blog post that breaks things down for you. And that's another thing. And I know we have kind of a sort of IBM led the theropod articles, right? But even just beyond that, right? If people are learning things, and they share those things, right? Put them in a Medium blog, blog article. If you're able to, put together, YouTube videos showing people how to do these things, break down the problems, because it's in ZOS land, you're kind of limited in a lot of ways to just the manuals, and the manuals are a good reference if you already know what you're doing. But if you don't know what you're doing, you need like a place to start. You need somebody to break things down for you, and it's really hard in this space. You really take it for granted. So definitely just part of putting information out there so people can Google this stuff and get up to speed, right? I think that's a big part too.
Cody, you joined the stage. Is there something you'd like to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to expand upon the point, rather what I said before about just being able to use the OS, because I feel that if we want to get this farther reach into, or rather far reach to more people, Linux, it's free. It's open source. You can download any sort of distribution you want, plop it on a Raspberry Pi, and mess around with it or run it in a virtual machine, right? ZOS, you have ZExplore, or I believe there's another platform. I've just messed around with ZExplore, and I think that just being able to use it, rather not having so many avenues in which to use it, severely limits the possibility of reaching more people and educating them.
Yeah, and
So
and to your point, one of the other big problems with that is it's really hard for for the open source community to support open source software on ZOS because they have no access to ZOS systems. And, in a lot of cases, when we port things and we try to contribute those changes back to the community, they don't want them because they don't want to take on that overhead, right? And understandably so, right? How do you test this stuff to make sure it works? You have no, you have no, you can't create a GitHub Actions workflow to run all your tests for ZOS. That's not a thing, right? So, so to your point, it's very multifaceted. There's a lot of different issues that it causes by just not being as accessible as x86 and ARM Linux systems.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, if you think about like back when Unix was just a university research system, you had shell servers, right, with terminals. If there is more of a possibility of expanding that sort of access to a mainframe computer for the purposes of education, I think that short of open sourcing ZOS or distributing binaries of the operating system, I think that is a path to take. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
Mr. Darren Search.
G'day, Stephen.
How's it going,
Sorry, I was
buddy?
a little bit late. I usually try and sit in the background and listen because there's so much amazing stuff going on, and I talk too much anyway. But really, really remarkable conversation. I'm sorry, there was one young gentleman who was talking about Z Explore being it. Please, I'm with Interskill Learning. We deliver over 1 million hours of mainframe training online annually, typically to the big corporations. But we help out people that aren't going to cost us business. So we donate courses and curricula to universities and anybody else. So if there's anyone out there having trouble finding training, makes me cry when people say, oh, there's only manuals and there's nothing else. So please, Darren, so you can see my name there, reach out to me on LinkedIn and I'll set you up with open access. If you're a student or if you're interested in getting into the industry or anything like that, you can have our stuff for free. So I'll open it up for anybody. Somebody else said about corporations not providing enough training, and that is a problem. It's amazing how some companies penny pinch. Other companies are amazing. Stevens and Sono and IBM and a lot of them are fantastic. They throw a lot of money at it. I sometimes think back to Y2K when somebody figured out that Y2K was going to happen. Everyone, something big's coming down the track here, and the industry threw an enormous amount of money at it and paid a lot of people to do a lot of work. And when we got to the December 31st, 1999, it went through without much trouble at all. And that was because of the money that had been put into it and so forth. So it makes me sad when organizations say, oh, these mainframe skills worries are one of my top concerns. And then you say, okay, well, put your money where your mouth is and invest in some comprehensive training for your workforce and for the next generation coming through. And they go, oh, well, we've cut out training budgets. It is pretty infuriating, but I think, very, very solvable with companies that are providing training, with people like Emma that are putting together Dinoframe, the community's putting stuff together. Young Dr. Sarcasm there's got all sorts of innovative new technologies and things that are going to take the weight off the training as well. So there's a lot coming, but the industry needs to embrace it. And I'll shut up. That was 10 different.
No, it's important, and I just want to underline something Darren said. We can be doing some of that extra training if we could create, take something that you do well and create a video. We can put that on Dinoframe. We could, if you want to do an article, Theropod is a great place to publish it. I mean, this community needs to support each other. And so let's take what you know and let's make it available. And you might be sitting there thinking, there's nothing I know that's important. That's not true. Everything that you do can train somebody, right? You just don't know that person.
And that's the critical knowledge transfer that the industry needs as well, because training as a whole has to be generic. It has to teach the standard stuff. But the industry is going to get to a point when people are retiring, or it has for the last 10, 20 years. It gets to a point where people retire and something happens and everyone goes, oh, how do we fix this? And they, Bob just retired 6 months ago. He's the only one who knew how to fix this. Put this stuff down, your skills, your knowledge, the things you understand and so forth, document it somehow, put it in training, put it anywhere, but pass that on, give it back to the next generation.
And I hope I'm not speaking too much for you, Darren, or you, Stephen, but I think any one of us would be glad to help you. I have this. Is this good enough? Okay, well, here we can tweak it here and we can tweak it there to make it fit the community a little better. But so we're here to help you be successful in this space, right? We want you to be successful. We want you to grow your presence. It's just really important that we take what's in your head and make it available to a larger community.
And this is slightly self-serving, but hearing from people who say that this training's all there is and I've got nothing and that's it, don't be afraid to start to lobby. This is part of, there was a conversation happened in the careers section of Discord the other day, and I said I'd bring that up on this call. And someone was asking about what sort of different careers there are in the mainframe space. Is it just a programmer? Is it just a systems person? Or is there other stuff? This was triggered because Interskill's hiring a salesperson, but I truly believe that a good mainframer who's happy to talk to people would be a great salesperson, especially in education. And I said, bring that up because so many of us have got wandering, meandering career paths. You don't have to be a techie, or if you love being a techie, then be a techie. You can move up into management. You can start to do other things with other technologies. You can move into sales or all sorts of consulting, everybody chime in and help me here, but there's so many different job roles in the mainframe space that you can go into to really have a look at your talents and what sort of things you like to do. We're a long time working and eventually we retire, but you might as well be doing something you really love in the interim. It makes life a lot better. So has anyone got any interesting career paths or choices or obscure titles or job roles that they can think of?
I've always found the solution architect people to be fascinating, right? Like they have to know just enough, but not too much, right? Like they have to know what's possible, but not how it's possible. And I oftentimes just slam headfirst into those people because I'm like, you told them we could do what? And they're like, well, you told me about that thing. You gave me that like 20,000 foot view of what it does. And I was like, yeah, but you told them that it can do this thing that I've never, ever seen it do. So like Jared would know my pain there, right? We've done a lot of things, just he and I together, where it's just like someone promised this. But you're right, Darren. I think that like boiling it down to just techno geek, if I'm using Mr. Joe Winchester's terms, techno geek things that we do, there's a whole nother business aspect to it, right? And that's awesome. But like, I think Abdul in the chat said that, a lot of people don't even know what the hell we're all doing here, right? You talk to somebody at a school, you say, well, what's going on with the mainframe, and they'll be like, I didn't even know those things exist, right? And we will consistently have this image problem. We will consistently circle back around to this. How do we get people into the platform? How do we get ZOS into the hands of people who might need to learn and do something? And yet, and still, we continue to boil mainframe down to just ZOS, right? There's so much more to it than that. And, I kind of wonder what we're going to do going forward. What language is going to drive app devs to our platform? Because it probably ain't COBOL and it probably ain't high-level assembler. Like, what are we going to do to bring the app devs here so that, because right now, the impetus that we have to bring people to do exactly what people like. Emma, we keep talking about you. You're sitting in the middle of our screen here, but you're bring people that are going to bring their passion to the table to create these things. That has to be the developer ecosystem. That has to be the infrastructure ecosystem. If we're not bringing people that have that passion to the table, and when they do come to the table, we're hitting them in the face and saying, no, not that way, right? Like, we have to have something that brings people here.
I do like the fact that Emma is always the center square. I don't know, the younger people may not get that joke, but I do think we do need some good business people, right? Part of our problem is we tech companies talk to the executives, and we talk about how cool this is, but it doesn't always translate to the money. And that's really all executives care about.
Yeah.
So getting some good business people on our side would be really, really valuable.
All right, so we are at. Oh, go ahead, Darren.
No, I was going to say I chatted about this on a recent, not so recent podcast. I think there's a personality type that makes a good mainframer, that problem-solving, intellectually curious, person that gets great pleasure from coding or working on systems or all that sort of stuff. I think there's a generation now, back in the 70s and 80s, if you were going to go into computing in general, you were on the mainframe. That was it. But there's a generation now that have gone through college and worked on distributed systems, and they're in corporates and they're part of the workforce, and they are skilled security people or skilled systems people or skilled programmers, but they don't know the mainframe's there. They've never had crossed paths with it, and yet personality type, they're ideal mainframers. And I'm seeing more of this in some of the larger corporations with the big workforces. They're starting to look for these people and train them up with mainframe skills and bring them across. So I think we're sort of being a little blinkered, thinking that the only way we're going to have the next generation of this workforce is through colleges and universities and hiring people fresh and getting youngsters interested in the mainframe. There's an enormous resource of tech people out there that are very, very, very skilled. They just haven't met the mainframe yet. And they are experienced and they know how to do security, or they know how to do systems work, or they know how to program. And all they've got to do is come across and go, oh, yeah, this is where I want to work. There was at your re-IPL, Stephen, in Kansas City, was one of those light bulb moments for me. We were sitting in one of the side room discussions, and there was a bunch of youngsters in there. And some of the oldies, Frank, you were there. Some of the oldies said, what brought you into the mainframe? Why did you choose the mainframe? And I was expecting all sorts of different answers. And they said, we love how consequential and how powerful it is, how important it is in the world, how consequential it is. Why would you not want to work on this system that runs the world? This is amazing for us. And that just blew me away. I mean, I think there's people out there that just need to meet the mainframe, and they'll be hooked. They'll be the career mainframers that we need. So anyway, again, I'll shut up too much.
Or if not career mainframers, then at least people who aren't unfairly biased against it.
Well said.
Right? Like I think there is, like, I'm gonna use the word dichotomy again. There's like the mainframe strategy of being hyper specifically good at what the mainframe is great at, and the desire to build up those mainframe specific, as you were saying, like low level HL-ASM experience, Kix experience, DB2. I mean, name that like interesting mainframe subsystem, and you will find something that we need some level of expertise in. But then on the other side of the house, there's a desire to treat the mainframe like just like another computer that runs Rust or Python or Java or C or like the things, or SSH, as we were saying in the chat, right? And learning how to like stitch those things together so that you can treat it like it's just a computer that happens to have more memory and IO backplane than anything else that you could possibly imagine using in college, unless you're going to one of the few universities that has mainframe specific or like some sort of scaled high performance computing electives at the grad level. What Darren was saying earlier about bringing in just generally interested, like open to new information people, I think is spot on, in that in the same way that it's spot on for things like quantum. So when I went to Tech Exchange last year, I talked with a bunch of just like interesting generalists who were into stuff that I don't know anything about. And so many of them were like, oh, I did a BA in English, or like my major was in history, or I started out in international relations or something, or I was in like just math. And then I just saw this job post for this like weird technology that no one really like knows about, and I felt like I could contribute because there just aren't a lot of other people doing it. I think you could use that same pitch to bring people into the mainframe as they're using to bring people into quantum, because just for different reasons, there are fewer people who understand it, but it's proven and known to be hugely consequential and important to humanity. And if there's anything that the young kids are looking for, and frankly the old kids are also looking for, it's like a way to turn an honest dollar and contribute to the world without feeling like you helped ruin it. Right? And like you got these gigantic energy efficient computers that like run the economy and like run health systems and travel systems. Like, what's not to love about that? And I just think it's a very easy pitch to make if you can get in the door and make it at the same career fairs where folks like Google and Microsoft are like, hey, would you like to come over here and earn like $750,000 a year? And it's like kind of tough to compete with that when, I think all of us would agree there's probably less money in the mainframe than we would like, just because of the size of the market. But man, the computer science is phenomenal. And like, I don't know, you can come to work and feel like you actually did something. And if you can find kids who care more about that than making $500,000 a year, I think those kids are out there.
And my
We're
point
actively making the world a better place. You
Yeah.
look at some of the FANG companies, and some of them are actively making things worse for people. We're long past the 90s and early 2000s where, the wide-eyed, oh, the internet's going to take off and this is going to be amazing. We're going to change the world. It's like, no. Do you really want to be the person at Google that's actively working to make the search suck more so people spend more time at your site? I know at the end of the day, I'm trying to make my customers happy, and they're the ones who, make my plane tickets go through, keep my bank running, and put food on my plate. So it's easy for me to sleep at night.
I'm wondering if Julia has an opinion on this. She's lurking in the crowd, and she's a design person. So I was wondering if she had an opinion. And she's uncharacteristically quiet.
Probably typing an angry message to you right now. So while
Not nice to
Julia
call
decides
out
if
like
she,
that.
yeah, there you go. So while Julia decides what she's doing here, I did want to kind of let everybody know we're at about 8 minutes here to time. So if there's anything you want to bring up, change the topic, something entirely new, now would be the time to do that. Otherwise, we'll probably continue parroting on about this topic about how we can get education moving and kind of breed this ground up initiative to create content and create a next generation of people. Looks like someone raised their hand, so that's a good thing. Make sure the price is right before you come on down. Let's see if Just Andrew comes to the table here. There we go. On stage. Let's see what we get here.
His mic's not working.
Uh-oh.
I hate
All
when
right.
that.
Oh, there we go. No. A new person. Here we go.
There we go.
Yeah, new person. Hey, yeah, I'm uncharacteristically quiet because I'm doing this on my mobile today, so it's been a bit different for me. Anyway, yeah, no, this conversation has been really awesome. I love the ideas, Frank, when you say share your nuggets of information, share your nuggets of knowledge. Even if you think that they're not useful, they are going to be useful to someone. It goes in the same vein of like, there's no such thing as a stupid question, right? If you're asking it, likelihood is that someone else is probably asking it too. So I think that that's really, really powerful and needs to be kind of taken to heart. And in this room, I know that there's, I'm not even going to hesitate to guess, but lots of years of experience. So let's try and like capture that, right? And Emma's done a great job in putting that somewhere where it's accessible to a lot of people, and Frank's been doing the same thing. So I think that's awesome. Another avenue that may not have been thought about, and I put it in the chat, you know, we're getting more and more designers. I was at the kind of, you know, few years back where Z decided to include some more designers. The I guess conduit between all of our really I guess knowledgeable folks that need to have help with communicating between each other, because I know that the business doesn't often communicate well with development, and development may not communicate very well with business, and I think design is that missing link. I've seen it work, I've seen it benefit our clients, and that's what we are. We are the voice of our user, we're the voice of our clients, and you know, sometimes business just needs the proof that clients are requesting this or needing this. So we have research, we have folks that, you know, can dig up that information and provide it on a silver platter to the business that might be helpful. So don't be afraid to kind of like, you know, grab a designer and say, hey, you know, this, and I hate when this and this, or I hate if when I'm doing this, this happens, and so on and so forth. Like, bring us your pain points. That's what's our bread and butter. And it can really help push things along, add fuel to the fire of those ideas that you guys are coming up with. So I think it's important to let you guys know that that's another avenue. But that's my thought. So yeah, it's been great listening in.
Yeah, and I thank you for that. I think I heard something on your microphone briefly there, just Andrew. If you want to try again, if not, I would tap into something. I think something that you just said about people not sharing their experience or their pain points is a huge problem we have today, right? I think that a lot of people will start down something, they'll hit a bump in the road, and they'll assume that they're doing something wrong, right? And they'll say, "Oh, somebody's smarter than me." And I say this a lot, probably to a detriment. Somebody smarter than me probably knows how to do this, right? And what do you inevitably do? You inevitably get funneled down some path of this is the way we've always done it, and no progress happens whatsoever. I think that experience that we need to impart upon one another and impart upon the industry is, when I hit this hurdle, raise my hand and say, "Hey, trying to do this thing, it was super uncomfortable, didn't work out well." And someone says, "Well, oh, you just got to go into ISPF and do this." No knock to ISPF, but like, maybe that's not your desire path, right? Maybe your desire path is, well, I want to do it all through SSH or through the Unix shell. Then you should still raise your hand and be like, "Yeah, I know I can do it this way, but I want to do it this way," right? That is the essence of progress. If you just continue to keep doing the same thing over and over and over again the same way, you're not helping anybody. I see Mike has joined us. Welcome to the stage, Mike. See if you can get off mute there.
Having a problem on mute, Mike?
All right, so we are down to okay, go ahead, just Andrew. Let's give it a go.
So can people hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank goodness. So, just a quick thing. I'm an educator, so just a quick shot off from the experienced folks out there. What are the most important skills for an entry-level mainframer to pick up so that I can get them nice and ready?
Yeah, there you go. We do have 2 minutes. That would have been a stellar topic to bring to the table about 10 minutes ago.
Maybe just DM me. I think
Yes,
that's probably a better way
absolutely.
to go about it.
Okay. This is a great topic. I'm going to put, we have our general careers channel there's in the chat. This is a great topic. If all of us kind of hanging out here want to kind of throw an attempt at what we think the critical, was it technical skills that you just mentioned? The critical technical skills are, make sure you tag Just Andrew in the chat, or as mentioned, send them a direct message with the skills. Yeah, Darren just posted the Interskill link for, I think that's the persona portfolios there. So I hate to kind of cut a good conversation short, but we have 8 seconds left on my clock. So we are rolling up our sleeves and finishing up here. I do want to say a huge thank you to everybody for being a part of this. If you don't recall, the SCE recorder, which Emma has graciously invented, has been hopefully recording us. And in this recording might pop up online somewhere. So if it does, by virtue of being here, you consented to being recorded. If you don't like that, I'm not sure what to tell you at this juncture. But thanks for joining us, everybody, and we hope to see you in the next month or the next time we have this conversation. I suspect it will be sometime in June. Have a great one, everybody. Take care. See you in the chats.